Welcome to the Menopause Conversations podcast. My name's Angela Council and I'm your host for this podcast, and this is where you learn all about menopause, what is happening to your body, to your hormones, and life in general. Everything is changing and sometimes it can seem really confusing, but this is where the confusion stops right now. This podcast will share with you everything you need to know about how you can navigate your menopause transition with ease. So sit back and enjoy the show. Bye for now. Welcome to this week's episode of Menopause Conversations podcast. And it's really great to be here again to share with you some more information, particularly around what is happening to your body as you're moving through this menopause stage of life. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking a little bit about going beyond the hormones, what's really happening with our body. Yes, we know that our hormones are moving, they're shifting, they're on a downward trend generally, but it's not always about the hormones. We need to go beyond the hormones. And 2 episodes ago, I spoke about looking at our stress levels and the role that stress plays in keeping our hormones balanced. And stress basically is not just, a busy day at work or the argument you have with your kids and your partner, whatever it is. Stress is so many different things. Our body, stress is actually good for our body. It does keep us alive, but it's the constant stress, the constant go. And that can come from, technology, from notifications binging at you all of the time. It can come from not eating the right foods. It can actually come from inflammation in your body. Stress causes inflammation, but inflammation is also very stressful. It can happen. Your body is stressed if the liver isn't working properly, if you're not digesting your food properly, if you don't have enough nutrition in your body. It is stressed. Environmental toxins can stress your body because of the impact they have on your body. So there's lots of different things that stress our body, and some things we can control and other things we can't control. And where we can put ourselves back in the driver's seat, so to speak, and look at the things we can control, then those things that are outside of our control, whilst they may still be playing a role, they have less of a role. Now, the last couple of years for everyone has been, we would say, pretty stressful. There's been a lot of change going on. We had, there was a lot of fear, there was lockdowns, there was all these things. But we couldn't do a lot about that. We couldn't do do anything about what was happening externally. We could do something about the way we were reacting to it, but even some of the reactions was very hard to control because there was kind of a feeling of not being safe and a lot of subconscious beliefs and habits and behaviors came out. So there was a lot of stress. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is something which it's a science, and it's called chronobiology. And chronobiology is really important, particularly for our health and prevention of disease and disruptions to our natural rhythms. Now, we're kind of aware that that we do have cycles in our life, in our health. So as women, we're very much dependent on cycles. We all have a menstrual cycle, for a certain time of our life. It's, every 28, 29 days we bleed, and, so we have a cycle. And some women's cycles are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. There can be, and as you're coming through this menopause transition, obviously this can blow right out. But we, in general, we have cycles. So we'll just go with, we have monthly cycles, but we also have daily cycles. So we have cycles of sleep, we have cycles of wake. So we have cycles or rhythms within our body to when to wake up and when to go to sleep. And, these work along with the cycle of the moon and the sun. So we have that cycle, and then in nature has seasonal cycles. Here in Australia, we tend to have 4 different cycles. So, the 4 different seasons. Some places only have two cycles. They have a wet and a dry season. They don't have the extra 2 seasons of, autumn and spring or fall, depending on where you live. But Australia, we tend to have, most of Australia tends to have, the 4 different seasons. And then also we look at, there are life cycles. We have cycles of life, when we're a child, when we're a teenager, then we're a young adult, and, so we have cycles in life. So everything around us runs in cycles, and there's kind of a repetition to that. But there's also, within that, the cycles, we all have our own personal cycle. We have our own what is known as biorhythm, and this there is a relation between our biorhythm and the environment and our behavior and our health. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. And I'm also going to share with you how you can find out what your personal biorhythm is. Actually, when you listen to your body and you're connected and you're very intuitive, you will actually know your own personal biorhythm. But many of us, unfortunately, are very disconnected from our bodies. We've been taught not to listen to our bodies. So we're not aware of our own personal biorhythm. So as I said, we've got these biological rhythms, and when we're out of alignment with our personal biorhythm, this can actually increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, depression, sleep disorders, and it also can impact your hormones and how you're transitioning through your menopause transition. And so it's really, really important. So it's really important that we start to work in alignment with our natural rhythms. And it comes with first understanding what our natural rhythms are and then adjusting our life around this. Now, most of us have got a bit of idea of what happens when we are dramatically out of alignment with our personal rhythms. And we see this when, if you travel, international travel, and you get jet lag, it's very, very obvious when you come out of alignment, because, you left home on a plane that was like, whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning. You traveled for 24 hours, you crossed a timeline and you lost a day, and all of a sudden it's 8 o'clock in the morning again. It's like, and this is when, when we from Australia fly over to the US, we land almost at the same time as what we left, but we've just traveled for 24 hours. So then we get jet lag, and we find that, jet lag is worse going one way than the other. So this is when it's quite obvious that we're out of alignment with our natural biorhythms. And another area which is very, very common is people that do shift work. When, and we see this, our emergency service people, but a lot of people are working shift work where basically they're awake when their body is meant to be asleep. So they're awake and they have to be performing, and some of the emergency service personnel, they need to be alert when their body is meant to be asleep. And these people suffer so much from many, many chronic diseases because of, the longer you do shift work, the worse your health will be, because you're out of alignment with your natural biorhythms. But as I said, everyone's different. And when we're talking about biorhythms, there's a couple of things I want to cover tonight. Number one, our sleep cycles. Number two, our eating cycles. And number three, our movement cycles. And when we change this to be more in alignment with how our body naturally is, how it can really, really change your health outcomes. And I'm going to share a couple of stories. I'll share my personal story, and I'll share a story of one of my clients. So last week I started talking about a little bit more about personalization, bio-individuality, that we're all different, and then based on our genes that we have different requirements, different health requirements about when we eat, when we sleep, and all of that. And there have been, I know for me as a naturopath and nutritionist, that over the years, what I have taught, I now realize is very, very incorrect. And if I just want to start with sleep, because what I was taught is that everyone needs to be in bed around 9 o'clock, and waking up around about 6 o'clock in the morning. That was a good, healthy sleep cycle. So that was giving you 8 to 9 hours sleep. And that's exactly what I used to do. I used to try to get to bed 9:30, but I was finding that I couldn't sleep through till 6. I was waking at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I was thinking there's something wrong with me. And I have now discovered that going to bed that early is actually not within my personal biorhythm, that I'm actually better to stay up later. And, this is where, I know when I used to work in clinic and people used to come into me and say, oh, well, no, I'm always tired. And so we'll go to bed earlier. Of course, that's the problem. Wasn't necessarily the problem, because some people, they're actually designed to stay up later and to sleep in later. Other people, their bodies are designed to go to bed earlier and to wake up earlier. And it's when you understand your body and you can sleep it in your natural sleep cycle, not what society tells you. Because we've been told over the years, and I know for me, I was always told, get up early in the morning, exercise first thing in the morning, start work first thing in the morning, and get everything done. And then by the time you get home and you have dinner, it's time to go to bed. It is because it's totally exhausted. I was totally exhausted because that's completely opposite to what my body actually requires. And, I'm not saying you can't do it. You can do it. And I personally did it for many, many years. I worked in corporate and I was always like the first one at work. I used to drive into the city really, really early. So I've missed the peak hour, used to start work really, really early, get in, get everything done. But I also was highly, highly stressed. I burnt myself out 4 times before I discovered that was not right for me. What is right for me is to have a slower start in the morning and to actually stay up later at night and do more work at night. I do most of my work now at night. I am more creative at night. I get more work done at night. And then I get a better night's sleep. And this was what comes from understanding my personal biorhythm. So for me, I rarely will have a meeting before 10 a.m. in the morning. Very, very slow in the morning. I have a later breakfast, and this is another one. When we eat plays a big role. When is our body ready for eating? I used to have breakfast at, like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning before I go into work. My digestive system was not ready to take food. When I in clinic, I used to always say, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You've got to get up. You've got to have breakfast first thing in the morning. Not so. Not for everybody. Not for me. I do have breakfast, but I have my breakfast later. Rarely will I have breakfast before 9 a.m. these days. Sometimes it may not even be till 10. On the weekends, it might even be later. But then someone else with a different health type does need to have breakfast, at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to get themselves moving. They also need to get up. They need to be moving. They're the people who need to be doing boot camp first thing in the morning, not someone with a body like mine. Boot camp in the first thing in the morning. I used to do that, and I used to struggle. I had no energy. I couldn't do it. I used to think I was a failure because I couldn't keep up with everyone, because 5 a.m. in the morning was not right for my body. But I've just come back from an hour walk. I've just climbed 700 steps with 6 kilos on my back, and I was strong and I had the energy. Yeah, it was a bit, a bit of cardio workout, but I could do that easy in the afternoon. I had no way in the world I could do that in the morning. But this is where understanding what your body wants is when's the best time for you to exercise. For some people, first thing in the morning is the best time. For other people, they're better off to do their exercise later in the day. When's the best time to eat? Some people, is the best time for them to have their breakfast is first thing, others later on. Some people need to be eating 5 meals a day. If you're getting up and you're moving, and sometimes some people need to be moving a few times a day. They don't need to do a lot of movement. So, there are some health types who ideally will do exercise or, physical movement 2 to 3 times a day, but they only need to be doing 20 minutes of time, as opposed to someone who's got a body type like mine, who can go for an hour and a half, but only needs to do that once a day, and sometimes not even every day, like 3 to 4 times a week, not every single day. So this is understanding your own personal chronobiology. And when I got this, when I understood this, and when I learned this, and I started to make changes, and I started to understand personalized health and precision medicine, the very first thing that I did when I discovered this was change the time that I exercised from first thing in the morning to later in the afternoon. And just by making that change, before I changed anything else, before I changed food, I changed anything else, I immediately dropped weight. I dropped weight because I brought my inflammation down, because exercising in the afternoon was better for me. When I was doing it in the morning, it was inflaming me. It was increasing my joint pain. My energy levels were coming down. I wasn't sleeping properly. I had all of these issues, these health issues, that when I swapped to the afternoon in training, and it was exactly the same exercise, all of a sudden my body started to change, and it started to adapt to doing what it did naturally. I used to think I was lazy when I used to struggle to get out of bed first thing in the morning and exercise. I used to do it. I used to force myself to do it, but I struggled. I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the strength. And I used to think there was something wrong with me, that I was lazy. I couldn't keep up with everybody else. But I had a different body to theirs. I want to share with you Kelly. Now, Kelly has a similar body type to me. She works in corporate. And when she was working with me and she did my program, same thing. She used to get up first thing in the morning, and she used to have to she have a breakfast. I think she was leaving at 5:30 in the morning, getting the bus into work, and starting work early. And when she was on the bus, she was doing a whole pile of work. So she was getting into it and getting work done on the bus on the way to work. And she also used to do some exercise as well, somewhere in there, before work. I think she used to catch the bus and then go and do some exercise, and then she'd go to work. So, but when she started working with me and we looked at what her health type was, and I said, okay, well, how can we look at shifting some of that load, that stress that you're doing in the morning, and move that to the afternoon? Now, there's some things that we couldn't change. We couldn't change her job. We couldn't change the times that she had to work. But there were things we could do. We could make the morning less stressful for her. So, yes, she had to get up early. Because we're going to shift her exercise to the afternoon, she didn't have to get up quite as early. She started to take her breakfast to work. So the night before, she would have her breakfast and everything prepared, and she would take it to work rather than eating it early. And she would have everything prepared the night before, like what she was going to wear and everything. So it was slow. It wasn't stressful. It was all about bringing the stress down. And then she would go to work, and and rather than working on the bus, we got her into doing some relaxation. So just listening to some music, some meditation, and just kind of keeping it nice and chill, not sitting there, searching through emails and answering emails. She'd get to work, she'd do her work, and then what she did was because she didn't need to be exercising every single day, she shifted her exercise to later in the day. And there was a couple of days that she could actually leave work earlier. So what she would do is she would take her gear with her, and then because she was into hiking and things like that, rather than catching the bus all the way home, she would catch the bus a certain way home. And where we live, where she lives, there were a lot of bush hikes, like bush tracks. So what she would do is she would then get changed into her hiking gear, put the rest of her gear in her backpack, and she would hike the rest of the way home. And by doing that, what she's done is she's getting her exercise in. So she moved it to the afternoon, and all of a sudden her health started to change. Her joint pain started to go away. Her her weight started to drop. She was getting stronger with all that hiking in the afternoon that she wasn't getting when she was going to the gym in the morning. She was able to think clearer. She was able to sleep better, all because she started to understand the right timings for her body. And it makes a massive difference. And, when I'm working with my clients, this is one of the first things we do is we look at how can we shift you back into an alignment with your personal biological rhythms. And it makes such a difference over and above the food you're eating, and all of that. It just makes such a difference because it just brings that stress down. So you might want to, as you're saying, well, okay, so how do I find out what my personal biorhythm is? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be sharing in the Secret to Thriving in Menopause workshop that starts very, very soon. I'm going to help you identify your own health type. And once you've identified your health type, then I will share with you what are the best timings for you, the best times for you to be eating, moving, eating, and all of that. So at the end of the workshop, which runs over 5 days, so it's only about 45 minutes and at night, so that all the calls are going to be at night time, 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. By the time of that at the end of that workshop, you're going to have your own personalized menopause blueprint. You will have a better understanding of what your health type is and exactly what you require for, when it comes to food, movement, timings, all of that. You'll have your blueprint that you can follow. Now, and then if you want to work with me further, you'll get the opportunity to do with that in the workshop. But this is a free workshop, completely free. And honestly, it will make such a difference to just understanding the timings. Just makes such a difference to your health, the way you manage your stress. It helps you with your sleep, helps with so many different things. Knowing the best time for you to go to sleep, the best time for you to wake up. Now, I'm going to be honest that I still tend to wake up quite early. I wake because we don't have curtains on our room, so because we overlook the ocean, so I wake up with the sun. So if the sun gets up earlier, I will get up earlier, and late at the moment. The sun's getting up a little bit later, so I'm sleeping in a little bit later. So I do tend to get up with the sun, but even though I get up, I don't do anything in the morning. I do very, very little, but I will basically shift from bed to a chair where I will read, meditate, journal, or whatever. So I'm still very, very relaxed. So even though I do wake up earlier, but I'm still getting a good 7 hours sleep. So, I'll go to bed at 11 o'clock or so, and I sleep solid through till 6. So I'm still getting a good solid 7 hours sleep, which is a good night's sleep. But I do tend to wake a little bit earlier. But when the sun's not up, I could sleep through to 7:30. Generally, don't go any later than that. But it's part of that's also just a habit of me waking up with the sun. So if you are interested in joining the Secret to Thriving in Menopause workshop, the link is bit.ly, so bit.ly/menopause with a capital M _workshop with a capital W. So bit.ly/menopause _workshops and a capital M and a capital W. If you go there, you will be able to register and come over. Everything will be run through a Facebook group, so you can come over, join the private Facebook group that's been set up specifically for the workshop, and I will share with you what your health type is, so that you can get a better understanding of how your body works and the best things you can do for your body, whether it's to do with the food, the movement, the timing, and all of that. So thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Menopause Conversations podcast. I'll be back next week with another topic that I'm going to be talking about when it comes to understanding your personal biology. Bye for now.